Hey, welcome to the Invisible Strength Podcast. Thanks for joining us. We have a unique twist to today's episode because our guest endurance athlete coaches, they are well-versed in navigating setbacks and cultivating resilience through very challenging times. Justin and Katie are also the co-hosts of the Endurance Athlete Podcast. We are excited to welcome them and get into the show. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Our pleasure. If you're new here, I'm Karin Wagner, and I'm joined by my incredible co-host and life coach and fellow lupus warrior, Chris Burton. Good to see you, Chris.
Always good to see you, Karin, and so excited to talk with y'all. Katie and Justin, I think it's going to be a fantastic time.
Yeah.
Yes, nice. It's nice to be here.
Nice
Thank
to
you,
meet
guys.
you. Yeah, I'm excited.
So, Katie and Justin, for people who don't know you yet or aren't familiar with your work, can you tell us about yourselves?
Sure. Ladies first. Go ahead, Katie.
Okay. So I am a longtime runner, endurance athlete myself. I've been running since the age of about 12, maybe 30 years now I've been running. So that gives away my age a little bit. I'm a registered dietitian. So I've been working as a dietitian for the past 14, almost 15 years and work in a lot of areas of nutrition, but sports nutrition is one of my passions because I have that background in running. And so I just love working with athletes. And I do have myself Hashimoto's disease. So I do have an autoimmune disease that I navigate. I do have that background as well. That makes it a little unique because I do understand the chronic illness piece, although I've been pretty lucky to not have some of the more severe symptoms that some people do get with Hashimoto's. So yeah, that's a little bit of a quick background about you, Justin.
Yeah. So let's see. I didn't find endurance sports until I was in my 30s. So my educational background is I have a master's degree in undergraduate in economics. And so I spent most of my career as an economist, and I got into endurance sports because I had gastric bypass. And this has probably been about 15 years now. So I was at a max weight of about 365 pounds. I herniated my first disc when I was in my 20s. Couldn't, walk down the street without bending over and taking breaths and trying to catch my breath. I was almost a pack-a-day smoker. And I eventually just got fed up with it. And I had gastric bypass surgery. And I always wanted to be a runner. And so I started this journey of trying to transform myself after this surgery. I trained for, I think it was a little over a year just for a 10K, just trying to get my body to cooperate and to do stuff that it had never done before. And I got hooked. And I had a friend of mine that was at work said, you should check out this triathlon that's in the one where he was from. And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll check it out. And I didn't know how to swim at the time. So I just did a little duathlon. So you run first and you bike and then you run again. And I crossed that finish line and that was it. It's been a little over 10 years, maybe 10, 12 years now. And I just grew over the years. It took me 5 years to get to my first full Ironman. So I've done 2 fulls, I've done 9 half Ironman, all kinds of other distances. And I just had a passion for trying to get people to understand that their bodies and minds were stronger than what they really are. And I was just living proof of that. If I could take myself from not being able to walk a city block to completing my first Ironman, that I knew that anybody could do it as long as they wanted it bad enough. And so I started Tabula Rasa Racing right before COVID hit. I don't recommend trying to start a coaching business when all the races get shut down from a pandemic. But it made it a game of patience as I waited for races to kick back in. Then the races started happening and athletes started signing on. And so then, I got my certification. So I'm a certified triathlon coach, a certified run coach, and been running Tabula Rasa Racing ever since and have absolutely loved every single minute of it. I love being a coach. I love being an athlete. It's just part of who I am. So onward and upward. So that's about it for me.
Love that. Love that. You mentioned something, and even listening to what Katie was saying with her diagnosis of Hashimoto's, that sense of endurance sports, not just being about something physical, but also about being something mental. How do you go about teaching that sort of desire? Can it be taught? It's one thing for you to decide, I don't want to just struggle with walking a city block. I want to be able to run a 10K. How do you help someone who hasn't made that mental dedication or had that sense of mental urgency, regardless of their physical condition, to say, I can do this? Can that be taught?
I think sometimes people have to have some sort of something happen, something to motivate them, like a why behind starting endurance sports, or even just getting that first step out the door, or decide they're going to do a run for the very first time. Or Justin can speak to that, because I've always been a runner. I found running at such an early age that, I don't really know what it's like to start something like that, from as an adult. When I work with someone, usually they're coming to work with me, and they're like, there has to be something like motivating them to want to go. It's hard to like ignite that fire in someone, as they have to figure out what it is. And so sometimes that is a discussion I'll have with someone who feels as though they're motivated to do something. It's just, what is it that's going to get you out of bed at 5 a.m. to go? Or like, it can't be just weight loss. It has to be something more meaningful. So sometimes that is a conversation I have, but I don't think it's something that I can necessarily create for somebody. And that can be frustrating on my behalf, because I know all the benefits I get from being so active. I want to be able to have other people experience that, but getting them to start you can't really be the one to motivate somebody, if that makes sense. I don't know,
Makes a ton of sense.
Different about that, Justin?
Yeah, the way that I think about this is that I can't be the one that creates it, but I can be the one that fosters it. It's almost like I'm a farmer, and I'm watering it, I'm fertilizing it, I'm feeding it.
Right.
But the seed has to do the work.
Yeah.
So when athletes come to me, they have something that they're chasing after, but they don't necessarily know what it is all the time. One of the big things that we see as coaches with endurance athletes is that we find them stepping into this world because they're looking for a drastic change to take place. Whether that means they want to change behavior, change habits, change lifestyles. They've had life change. You can see this, unfortunately, with ends in relationships and things. And they are looking for a shock to the system. And sometimes that is a sustainable why. Sometimes it's not. So one of the conversations that we do have to have with athletes as coaches, that we have to really tease out, really, what is a deeper why? We have the surface whys, but we have to really dig in to find the roots of those whys, because when it gets to be 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, and it's winter time, and you have a swim on the plan, that's really hard to go and do unless you're really driven and motivated to do it. So we got to find what that reason is. But it's my job as a coach to spoon feed them a little bit, because if you shove it all right in front of them at the same time, they tend to get overwhelmed. And, I'd much rather just feed them just a little bit, tease it just a little bit, get them some small accomplishments, and then that builds momentum. And sometimes if you have a why that may not be as deep, the momentum can come in and make up for a less dominant why or superficial why, because they see the change taking place. And when they see it, they want more of it.
Yeah.
So it's my job to foster that as best as I can. We have athletes that are just one and done. They just wanted to check the box, which is fine and it's reasonable. The way that I am as an endurance athlete is this is a lifestyle. And so the accomplishments are fine, but I'm more into the process than I am the ultimate outcome. So as long as I do a good job in fostering that athlete's experiences and to a certain extent motivations, then I feel like I'm doing a pretty good job as a coach. So that's the way that I see it.
I respect that.
Yeah, it's well said.
I love that you bring up the why, because I've heard people be like, I want to lose weight. I want to get healthier. But once it starts to get hard, it's like, I'm just going to go ahead and eat those cookies anyway.
Right.
Then it's like, you really have to go back to the drawing board and dig deeper. Why do you want to be healthy? And keep asking those questions to really understand the full meaning of your why.
True.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yeah, I think that's a key with endurance athletes, or even with nutrition, my nutrition related clients, because you mentioned the cookies and I think it's hard. We live in a world where it's hard. Sometimes there's a lot of things working against us. So when you have that why, or you really have established that, and you have reminders or things that you can set up for yourself and make it easier for yourself, then it's so much easier to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Especially with endurance athletes, I can imagine there are so many setbacks and it's such a long journey. It's not you're going out and I'm going to run a 5K and I'm done. I'm curious how you guys help people navigate those setbacks when times do get tough.
Ooh.
That's a hard one because I've even had my own recent setbacks or disappointments with a recent marathon that I've completed. I totally understand the setbacks throughout my whole 30 years of running. I've had plenty of them.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be really discouraging if there is a setback, depending on the severity of it. If it's like an injury or something really more serious that happens, I know that can be more devastating for people. So it's helping them understand, like, okay, now you have had this setback. We either have to reframe your goals, and that's okay, because just reminding people that it is a process. Being an endurance athlete is not always linear. You're not always going to get to that goal exactly as you thought you were going to. Sometimes you aren't going to achieve the goal. Sometimes things are going to get in your way. And remember, like, helping them remember that that's part of the process. Sometimes, like, it's going to happen. It happens to all of us. It happens to me. I know it's happened to Justin. And so reminding them and then helping them refocus. Okay, you have some sort of injury or something. Let's really focus on taking care of yourself. The focus is going to change a little bit, and helping them reframe it instead of sort of in that negative mindset of, well, now I'm not going to be able to get my goal. What's the point? Why am I doing this? Trying to help them reframe and move forward. And now their focus is on recovery from their injury, or if it is a health setback of some sort, okay, now we have to figure out how to overcome that health setback or something related to your health, and then figure out if you want to continue to do the endurance sports to manage that moving forward. I think my job sometimes just helping people look at the bigger picture and realize that this happens and it's a bummer in the moment, but if we reframe things and set different goals, and it's all part of the process, and eventually, we will get to our goal, but it's not every race isn't going to go well, and we're not going to be able to keep training and never have something happen. And I think we learn a lot from those setbacks too. We learn about ourselves and that we can get through some hard things. I always want to tell people that it's a learning journey. It's a journey of sometimes learning more about ourselves as well, which is something that I've learned from endurance sports. Being an endurance athlete, I've learned so much about myself and what I can accomplish. And sometimes those setbacks are actually part of that learning process, and I get something out of it in the end. Justin, I know you had your own setbacks, and you have athletes who have had setbacks.
I've made a career out of setbacks.
That's a quote. That's a quote.
I mean, the way that I look at it is I have a lot of conversations with athletes, and one of the questions that I get from them quite often is, how do I do this? How do I approach this training without getting injured? And the response that I always come up with is like, okay, not getting injured is off the table, because that is going to happen. Now, we're going to do our best to mitigate the risk. But even as a coach, I can't wipe out that risk completely. As an endurance athlete, you can't wipe out that risk completely. I mean, we could all get in our cars and start driving down the street and get into a bad accident. It doesn't mean that we just stop driving, right? The way that we build adaptation is through stress, and we don't know how much stress the body can take until it's had enough. So we really learn more from the setbacks than we do from the successes. I can count all the races that I've done and all the races that my athletes have done where things did not go well, and we draw on those experiences more so than we draw on the races and the experiences that went to plan. So those are nice to have. And I think a lot of times it's more luck than it is anything else to a certain extent. So trying to stay healthy is going to be a daily task in itself. Now, when you lay endurance sports and training and trying to push ourselves to the limit to build adaptation, the injuries are going to take place and they're going to happen. But like you were saying, the mental side of it is way harder to manage than the physical side of it, without a doubt. And I think that multi-sport athletes are blessed in that area Whereas triathletes, we have 3 disciplines that we're trying to manage all at the same time. So we're swimming, cycling, and running. And so when one of them is off the table, then we may have 1 or 2 other ones that we can at least focus on in the time. So it keeps the athlete's mind occupied. When you have a single sport athlete who is experiencing a setback or an injury, I think that those are harder to manage as a coach and as an athlete. I've had it before where I couldn't run and I almost felt like my entire endurance career was crumbling in front of me. The thoughts and emotions that came to me from that situation were really overwhelming.
Yeah.
And as coaches, our jobs are to try and calm the storm to a certain extent. It's just like, okay, this is temporary. This is not going to be something that's permanent. So this is what we're going to focus on right now. And if I can help walk them back a little bit, then it takes the momentum out of the negative thoughts and the bad places that we all go in our minds. And this is relevant to also those that deal with chronic illness. They feel overwhelmed by a diagnosis, or they feel overwhelmed by the inability to truly do what it is that they want to do. They know that they're mentally and physically capable of doing it, but their body just doesn't want to cooperate. And it's that aspect that is really challenging to manage as an athlete and as a coach, to walk it back. It's like, look, I know this is what you want to do, but this is what we can do now. And let's do this really well. And we'll see if we can get to the point where we can do what it is that you really want to do. I can't guarantee it, but we're going to fight like heck to try and get there. But we just have to be patient. So that's stuff that I experience as an athlete and as a coach when trying to help others through those difficult times where it just doesn't go as expected or go as planned or hoped.
I love that you lift that up, because something we talk about often on Invisible Strength is the way in which getting that diagnosis and seeing those symptoms show up and having your lifestyle turned upside down creates such great and significant feelings of loss. And I think particularly with athletes who are used to performing in a particular way and having your identity be wrapped around this notion of being an athlete, there's a particular acute sense of loss. So how do folks embrace, in your experience, this sense of loss while also understanding that it is a process and that they may not get back to, the superstar they once were, but they can embrace this new way of still being productive? How have you encountered people wrestling with that sense of loss and a new normal?
Well, one of the things that I think we've talked about it in a couple of our episodes is it is a grieving process. They're not necessarily grieving a loss, but they may be grieving the loss of an expectation or a hope and a desire. Those are really even harder to get past than the actual grieving of, oh, I had a bad race. Oh, okay, but that's fine. We're all going to have bad races, but the grieving of an expectation is all mental. And the only thing that I can do is encourage them to just take that time to allow the grieving process to develop, to get through it. You can't rush it. It's just something that kind of has to take its own time, and it goes at its own pace. Every athlete is so different. There are some people that get these diagnoses or these losses, and they just find a way to dig in, and they just go gangbusters, and they just go after it. They go after something else, and they just completely will shift focus. Then there are others that completely withdraw, and they just kind of turn inward. The way that we all deal with grief is so different that I can't really prescribe, hey, if this is what you're experiencing, these are the 5 steps that you should go through. But I do recommend learning about what grief is and what the grieving process is like, and allow that to materialize and take its time and let it pass. And I promise you, there will come a time where it gets softer and it gets a little bit easier. And then maybe that's the time where you start developing new expectations. You've allowed the old expectation to die. Now it's time to form new ones. And I find that those athletes that don't form new expectations, they never progress, and they're just kind of stuck. And they're stuck in that grieving process. You see it when people like lose parents and things like that. They're never the same. That's the way that I try to understand this.
Right.
But it's really up to that person on how willing and determined are they to not allow it to hinder their progression or advancement forever.
Mm-hmm.
And they just allow that thing to die so that something else can grow in its place.
Yeah. Beautifully said.
Yeah, I like that grieving. That's true. People don't realize that grief isn't just losing a loved one. There are other things that can cause that. Like losing a goal or something changes your relationship or the way you're able to participate in sport, I think can be a real challenge. When I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, I went through my own because it was an interesting situation where I was developed almost like a hyperthyroid condition. So I wasn't able to train for several months because my heart rate was very elevated. I was experiencing a lot of tachycardia, or where it's higher than it should be. In my mind at that point, it's like, am I ever going to be able to participate in endurance sports like I was before? I had this goal, this ambitious goal before that happened, of training for and trying to accomplish a time that would let me get into the Olympic trials. Not that I would ever make it to the Olympics, but I was like, if I could just get this time, and I was training very hard for it, and there's a whole ground there that may have contributed to this diagnosis. But it is that, I mean, I think I did go through a whole process, like Justin was saying, of like anger. Like, I think I was a little angry, like, this isn't fair. Like, why is it, like, what is this? Like, Hashimoto's, and what does this mean? And why can't my body just cooperate? Why? Because I'm like taking time off. I'm trying to take care of myself, and I'm having all these symptoms that they couldn't really do much about at the moment other than wait until maybe the heart rate started to come down and things started to normalize, and kind of through some of the stages of grief in that. And then trying to figure out what were my next steps. And then I think once I started to feel better, it was like, okay, like, I know this is part of me now. I'm not necessarily going to get rid of this. Like, how do I start to get back into endurance sports, and what is that going to mean? And once I was able to start training again, it got better. And I still think to this day, I've had to make some changes in my training and some of my expectations because of it. But I do agree there is this process that you go through, and that's just my personal experience with that in sports and having that diagnosis.
Thank you.
I very much relate to that. And I think a lot of our community members do, both feeling robbed physically and of those expectations that whatever you envisioned before, it's like, what? I can't do that anymore. It's just off the table. But then, to your point, after going through that grieving process, you can start to reframe and be like, okay, what does this look like now?
Yeah, absolutely. And it gets better. I think you get through it. And, I mean, it does get better, and you find your motivation again. It just may not be whatever, like Justin said it, whatever your goals were before. It may have to change. It may have to be different. And it is sometimes hard to accept that.
Yeah, once you process all the emotion, you get to the point where you're just accepting of the new normal.
Yeah.
If you can get to that point where you're just like, okay, these are the cards that I've been dealt, so I'm going to play the best hand that I can. That's where I see people start to make that turn. But you have to work through all the emotion, the anger, the frustration, the resentment, the jealousy of seeing other people being able to do what it is you're trying to do, but you can't do it. The comparison trap, you're comparing yourself to others, or you're comparing yourself to previous versions of yourself.
There it is.
Once you get past that, and you're just like, okay, I had those experiences. That's good for them. I'm happy for them. They're celebrating and they're having a good time. But this is the hand that I've been dealt. I'm going to play the best cards that I can. I'm going to do what I can. I'm going to perform to the peak of my abilities that I can do. And this is where I'm at.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned jealousy and comparing yourself.
It's all so real.
Because I know that's all true.
Yeah.
Like watching some of my friends who are athletes compete and have success when I'm struggling. That was one of the harder parts, is trying to be happy for them while also disappointed that I wasn't able to have that success.
Yeah.
It's so hard.
It'll be difficult. Something that also comes to mind, I'm glad you brought up that sense of like anger. Are there ways in which anger can be channeled into like a positive, constructive thing when it comes to training? Or is it something where, in your estimation, training for this, you need to have that like even keeled and level headed approach to it. Like what spaces do you find aggression is helpful in this training and preparation?
I mean, I think it can be helpful to be angry because it can motivate you to get out, but it can also be problematic because maybe it can push you too hard because you're angry or you're not maybe listening to your body as much because you're like, I'm going to train hard. I'm angry. I'm going to go out. I'm going to run. And you go a little bit harder than you should, or you push a little bit harder than you should. So I think anger can be a helpful thing to motivate you, but you have to also be very cautious because if you're letting that anger fuel your exercise, or especially if it comes to training, it can backfire because you're then not able to hear your body say, hey, this is much. Because I mean, anger is also, maybe there's a stress response to that too, and we're not really listening to the other parts of our, maybe being a little more calm. Or anger is a dangerous emotion. You don't want to stay there too long, right? And I think it's okay to have anger and use it occasionally if that's happening. But if you're just angry all the time, and that's not a very good place to be either. No. So try to work through that and find some peace because I don't think that's helpful in the long run for training.
I agree with you, as all emotions can either have a positive or a negative impact, whether it be happiness, joy, anger, frustration, jealousy, or what have you. We can always find two sides to that coin. The one thing that I do recommend, and I don't want this to sound like a shameless plug or anything, but if you find yourself in a situation where that's what you're experiencing, either seriously consider hiring somebody as a coach, because it removes the emotional part out of your hands. And now the coach takes over and says, this is what we're doing. The coach has less emotion involved. And now I'm just saying, just go ahead and just execute this. So my job as a coach is not necessarily just to give them training plans. My job is to actually protect them from themselves. And even if you aren't ready for a coach, then I strongly encourage you to just find a mentor to a certain extent, like somebody who's been in the sport for a while, not somebody who's at your same level, somebody that's a little bit wiser than you, and lean on them. If you can have more heads in the circle, it can be beneficial in redirecting those emotions when it's appropriate. But yeah, anger can be a strong motivator, or it can be a dagger that causes death. So it's both sides of the coin.
So real. So real.
Yeah.
The way y'all described anger, I just keep hearing like Yoda or some of the Jedi speaking to young Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah.
Stay away from the dark side.
That's right. That's
exactly. It's true. Funny.
As we are talking about anger, pushing ourselves too hard, I'm curious how you guys help coach people in knowing when to slow down or know you need to push through to expand your endurance or whatever it may be.
Yeah,
Ooh.
the art of coaching takes a lot of inputs. This is why I think having a coach is important, because if something's going on and you need to slow down, or maybe you need to push yourself a little bit harder, it's harder to know, to understand that unless you're a really experienced athlete. It really depends. Asking people pretty regularly, I'm asking them to add comments about how the workouts are going. I'm looking at, we both, Justin and I, use something called Training Peaks to provide workouts, and the inputs that when they run, they put the input in and we can see how the workout went. So I'm looking at that, listening to them, like, how are things going? Is it feeling too easy? Are you really overwhelmed? And there's other things like life stress. Are they someone that is experiencing another condition? I know for myself with Hashimoto's, I have to be very cautious to not overdo it because that pushes me over the edge. So it's a fine line sometimes, trying to figure out, when do I push a little bit harder and when do I have to cut back or take it easy? And I don't always get that right, but it can be really hard. But I think the biggest thing as a coach is really taking in all of the different aspects of what the athlete's telling you, what's going on in their lives, how they're feeling, and then also like how they're executing the workouts. I might look at their things like heart rate or, different biometrics and get an idea. It takes a few different inputs at least, and then shaping the plan based off of that. So if they need to take it easy one week because there's a lot going on, I can change it. And then maybe the next week they're able to push it a little bit harder. So that's how I go about it. I think it's just a lot of listening, a lot of paying attention and changing. It doesn't always set in stone. I tell people the training plan is in pencil. So things do change. I have an outline of what I want, in there, but it changes week to week based off of what's going on. It's not set in stone. And that's the art of coaching is you have to listen and you have to pay attention and you have to change and work with people in that way because we're not robots. What about you, Justin? I don't know if you have any different way of doing that.
Man, yeah. The way that I would describe this is that coaching is the art of communication. I get way more feedback from athlete performance by the qualitative measures that they're providing me rather than the quantitative ones that I get to see. So a quantitative measure would be, okay, what was their pace? What was their heart rate? What was their power? What was their cadence? All that kind of metrics and stuff that's fun to look at. But I mean, it doesn't drive the decision. What really drives the decision is the qualitative things that I get from them, the comments that they provide. This felt easy. This felt hard. I felt stretched. Life is just stressing me out right now. And so something that should have been easy felt way harder than what it should have been. That type of thing matters way more than, how fast you ran that 5K or how much power you generated on the bike. That stuff is fine. And I think that's what athletes tend to look at more to their own detriment. And that's why as a coach, I tend to lean a little bit heavier on rate of perceived exertion. I'm a big feeling kind of guy. So it's like, how did that feel? Did you feel like you could have just kept going? Or did you feel like you were at the brink? And I think I'm trying to talk to an athlete. And if you have children, it's like talking to a kid after they get out of school and you ask him, how was your day? What's the answer that you usually get from them? It's like, it was all right. You're just like, okay, I'm trying to pull more information out of you. So
sometimes you gotta ask follow-up questions.
You got to know how to ask leading questions that lead into other questions. So it's really an art of communication. If you're bad at communication and you want to be a coach, that's something that you definitely have to work on in order to effectively lead somebody and guide somebody, because part of your job is to protect them from them. That's hard to do if you're not talking to each other. It's a partnership. It goes way beyond just training plans and workouts and things. I've coached athletes through relationship changes. I've coached them through injuries and illnesses and setbacks. It goes way beyond. Coaching to the workout is like 10% of my job. 90% of my job is coaching the person. The training part is just one aspect of what they have to deal with and the stuff that we have to manage as a team. So
I feel like I should have had another degree in psychology because
absolutely,
it's part of as a dietitian too. I talk a lot about nutrition, but a big part of it is just people's barriers, what's going on in their lives. It's so much more. Just the coaching or the nutrition is the tip of the iceberg, and then people are complex, and there's a lot generally going on in their lives. So part of me is like, I should have had some background in psychology, but I do think having that ability to talk with people and really figure out what's going on, and I can't be their counselor, but I can maybe figure out how I can help them with their goals within what's going on in their lives and how I can support them. And being able to figure that out is important, and being able to ask those questions is have that communication is very important.
Yeah. What you're saying is so real, because I think about that sort of attachment that people may not even be aware of to what they eat. I remember there was a stressful year when I was a teacher, and I didn't even realize how many like purple Doritos I was having. You know what I mean? Just like, I just walk into that 7-Eleven after work, and just like these are my cigarettes. I'm gonna have these purple Doritos, and that's gonna be it. And just thinking about all the ways that you are working folks' sense of self and folks' sense of identity and how they cope and how they deal with life. And so I say all that to say that, how are you all setting the table in terms of like hospitality for people? We talked about asking that sort of like question that leads to other questions, but how do you create a space where a person, regardless of their ability, grief, anxiety, whatever the sort of obstacles could be in the way, you can get them to a place where they're ready to work?
Good question. It sometimes takes a few times of meeting with them, but I oftentimes will share part of depending on what's going on, I'll share some of my journey too and just open up a little bit. I feel like if I open up and make them feel comfortable, share some information about myself. Sometimes they'll be more comfortable to share, and the language I use around it, I'm here to support you. I use a lot of language of hopefully making them feel supported, and I'm not here to judge you. I'm not here to make you feel bad about what you're eating or what workouts you're not able to do. I'm just here to help figure out how I can help you and how I can support you and help you get to your goal. So I think that is the language and sharing a little bit of my own journey, I think sometimes helps. And sometimes it does take working with someone to get them to open up to me. Some people do struggle with that because maybe they have been hurt in the past or they've had bad experiences. And so sometimes it doesn't happen in the first time I visit with someone. It can be a few times before they'll open up. But I don't know if you have thoughts on that, Justin, how you get people to
it's a process. It's definitely a trust issue where you have to earn that trust before it's just not freely given. So that does take time. But one of the things that I find as a coach and one of the things that I do specifically with my athletes is that I break this perception that the relationship between the athlete and myself is some function of performance. Am I interested on how well they perform? Sure. But I'm not coaching them and I'm not investing in them based purely on their performance. So even if you have a bad race, I'm going to support you and I'm going to guide you and I'm going to be there regardless of whether it was a good race or a bad race. So I think once the athlete learns that, oh, I can trust this person because they don't care if I perform well or if I perform poorly, they're there for me. I think that goes a long way in contributing to the earning of that trust. It doesn't necessarily get you there all the way, but it's like one piece of the trust puzzle that would be needed in order to really become open and vulnerable. And I do the same thing that Katie does. I do share some of the things that I've experienced as an athlete or things that may relate to them to let them know that they're not unique, they're not alone in what it is that they're going through. Sometimes it's relevant. Sometimes you get a really unique situation where I don't have anything to draw on from that experience. And those are the challenging ones, but it's really relatability and breaking that thought that they're only there because I'm performing. Right. Or I need performance in order to get their approval and support. That's not the case at all.
Do you think people feel that way sometimes? Like if something's going on, they might be afraid to tell me because they think I'm going to be disappointed in them or something. And I think I have to put that out there that I want them to perform, of course, because that's something they want. But I also want them to learn about themselves or to be able to get something out of it or to be able to continue on a healthy habit. So there's going to be setbacks, or there's going to be times where maybe they aren't able to stick to a goal or a habit or something in it. And that happens, and them understanding that I'm not going to be upset with them, because sometimes people do have this like, oh, I'm going to upset Katie if I don't do this, or and I don't want that to be their motivation, because when they're stopping working with me, I want them to have gotten something out of it. I want them to be able to not just be doing something because they don't want to upset me. So I was having those conversations with people. As a coach, I want to support you to be able to have this journey, like we talk about the endurance athlete journey. It is a journey and you're going to have ups and downs. And I'm here to help make that journey more positive. And I don't want it to become a negative. So that's something I hope people understand when they're working with me.
To tie it more with your listeners, sometimes if you're dealing with somebody who's dealing with a chronic illness, there's another layer that they put on themselves, and it's one more layer of the nut that I got to crack through. It seems reasonable, especially if the diagnosis is new, that they may layer on another barrier that keeps people from getting in because they're dealing with trying to accept the diagnosis and trying to accept the possibility of a new normal. And we've talked about the grieving of expectations. And I think that it's a shell that just gets thicker and thicker and it's harder to break through. That's why it's so important to break this perception that I'm only here for performance. I want you to perform, but I only want you to perform because you want to perform.
Right.
This relationship isn't that I want your performance because it makes me look good. I could care less. But that's why that is so important, is to break that perception, especially dealing with individuals with chronic illness. It's more nuanced. It's not as easy as we're making it sound. And each situation is uniquely different. So
Absolutely.
But that's why we need coaches, because it is more nuanced and we are complex. I can tell you guys are both phenomenal coaches based on your thoughtful answers and how you approach working with people. Can you share where people can find you and listen to the Endurance Athlete podcast?
Sure. So we're the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. We're on all the major podcast platforms. We're on Spotify, Amazon, iTunes. We have the YouTube channel under the same name. For Katie, it's fuel2run.com.
We'll drop those links in the show notes. Thanks for sharing. Katie and Justin, it was amazing talking to you both. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having us so much. This was a great conversation. I really enjoyed this.
We did as well.
Thank you as always, Chris. Love having you a part of these conversations.
And I love being a part of these conversations. We get to talk to incredible people, and this is no exception. So thank y'all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To our community, make sure you check out invigorateyourjourney.com. We have support to help you through your chronic illness journey. If you're not sure where to start, we have a free quiz to get you going. We will see you next Wednesday on the Invisible Strength podcast. Take care and peace.
Peace, y'all.